Tavern in Buford for our Countdown to Signing Day event. My name is Brandon Adams. This is Dog Nation's Jeff Sintel. And what a night it's already been here. A great chance to talk to a lot of Georgia fans about whether the 2019 recruiting cycle is going to close its way out and what Georgia may do next in terms of hiring maybe announcing a defensive coordinator, but hiring a defensive backs coach. We'll talk a lot about that with you. We'll make the conversation kind of free-flowing here tonight. And Jeff, I think it's safe to say, based on the conversation we had during our official Q&A and just some of the casual conversation we've had with folks here at the Marlo's Tavern in Buford, there's a little bit of anxiety in the air about the fact that Georgia hasn't gotten its defensive backs coach yet. I don't think you helped today at Dog Nation Daily when you came on the air and said they're going to have this thing wrapped up by Friday, otherwise the ship may sail with Kaiir Elam. What do you make of the feelings from Georgia fans right now, and how much of that do you believe is justified?
Well, I just kind of think with Kaiir, I just think the best way for Georgia to get a good bounce out of Kaiir Elam's visit is if they have a lot of their King's horses and King's men in place. I think the sense of anxiety is okay, they just went through a coordinator, they just replaced the tight end, and look how quickly the tight end job was replaced. Job was filled with Todd Hartley, and everybody wants to know, it's been like, I think our Mike Griffith reported over 50 days now, Georgia's been without a defensive coordinator. And I think Kirby has always had his guys in mind, but maybe he's just kind of going through a specific process.
I mean, what do you make? I don't know that you and I have actually talked specifically about this issue. What do you make of the fact that it's been confirmed that Corey Raymond did interview at Georgia, seemingly left without an offer, and then, through sources out in Louisiana, seems to be content to stay at LSU? I think one of the things that adds to the concern here, both in terms of how it impacts this year's signing class and just the fate of the program moving forward, is the fact that something like this does become public but doesn't lead to good news for UGA. It's almost as if a lot of fans would say, hey, if you can't give me good news about a big-name coach, I'd rather not hear about it at all. I mean, how fair is that?
I just think in this situation the Georgia staff can't win, because if they're not bringing in names of high-profile defensive backs coach or assistants, then that's a loss. And if they are bringing in names, and that the answer is not a immediate, jump on the table, pound the fist on the table, yes, then that's a problem. I think, this is just Jeff here thinking, I think that a lot of this is just the structure of this process. Like, if Kirby Smart still had interviews to do, then should he be offering jobs to Corey Raymond while he's in the house? I don't know if that's the proper protocol to go about it either.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I guess it depends on who Georgia ends up with for a lot of fans to determine what this process that's been, as you said, 50-plus days. One of our commenters on Facebook said nearly 2 months. That's what all this is going to kind of weigh itself out to be. Now, we're going to take a lot of comments on both Facebook and YouTube. We did this last week. It's going to be the same thing tonight, where for the most part, we're going to be pretty free-flowing. I know a lot of you have got questions about a lot of these issues, and we'll do our part to answer as many of them as we can. And I guess we'll try to avoid what happened last week when we left the Dunwoody location there, and the Jim Chaney news broke right in our lap there, and we were on the Dog Nation video channels until late last week addressing all of that. Hopefully it won't be quite as chaotic a night tonight, but we'll take a lot of your comments. Before we do, though, let me just say this, that in the entire, gamut here, the Marlo's Tavern here in Buford, the Marlo, Georgia location, is actually on the short list of my true favorite tavern locations, and I'll tell you why. We're kind of right here in the Marlo, Georgia. There's the green space right next to us. I think that they call it the Village or whatever. It's a place that you can kind of come hang out, have some dinner, have some lunch, whatever, and kind of walk around. And even better is, now the situation in Marlo, Georgia, you can actually get your cocktail here from Marlo's and walk around the green space with that during the day, during the evening. It's a beautiful space. Marlo, Georgia, they've really done a great job of really taking that up a level since this place is open. Of course, Marlo's Tavern, a great addition to the neighborhood around here. But a great chance to walk around with a cocktail, Jeff. I know for a lot of people, they've heard us talk about Marlo's Taverns and they've never been to one. For me, the Marlo's Tavern here in Buford is actually one of the coolest to visit if you've never been to a Marlo's before.
So, you have my mind working on that, Brandon. And, sometimes the guys back home in our world headquarters think that I think too much about events and not enough about covering recruiting. But I think Dog Nation should think about tailgate practice. Maybe late July, early August, we could have a tailgate practice right out there. We could, they scrimmage for everything. There's practices for everything.
There you go.
Maybe Dog Nation needs to have a tailgate practice with Marlo.
That is a really good idea. We'll meet right out here at the Marlo's Tavern in Buford, the Marlo, Georgia location, do a little tailgate practice. The green space is perfect for that, and I think they would absolutely have a great time with all of that. All right, let me roll through really a lot of comments here, and we'll get a bunch of these going here as a part of our countdown to signing day event. Larry Stanley, Jeff says, with all the recent changes and departures, what will we look like in 2019? And Jeff, I'm assuming your answer on this is going to be the same as mine, that in terms of the delay seemingly in hiring a defensive backs coach, or the final pieces to be added after the transfer of Justin Fields and everything like that, the overall impact on 2019 I actually don't think is going to be that great. I think that Georgia was shortlist national championship contender at the beginning of the month of December. I think they are a shortlist national championship contender for 2019 at the end of December, the beginning of January. I think some of the stuff we're talking about with coaching hires and some of the recruiting stuff is about 2 or 3 years into the future. For 2019, though, I think the immediate present for Georgia is pretty much well insured.
Yeah, I guess I would kind of catalog what you were talking about earlier in your open. Is that Georgia's worries right now are like a series of Russian nesting dolls. Like, okay, there's the offensive coordinator. Well, first there was the defensive coordinator. Do you figure that one out? And it's like, okay, who's the tight ends coach? You figure that one out. And then you'll just get back to the normal January worries is, can Georgia get a top 10 wide receiver? Can Georgia get another top 10 cornerback? Can Georgia close with suddenly a 3-star tight end that it seems like he's Rob Gronkowski incarnate? This is a guy that picked up a Georgia offer, Brett Seither, on January the 10th. Dell, the man McGee, came and saw him on January the 11th.
That shows you how big of a deal he is.
Alabama offers him on January the 11th, and Todd Hartley's already visiting him on January the 14th on his first official day as a G-Dog again. So, I mean, that guy right now is getting a lot of love from the Bulldogs.
J.C. Cole in our Facebook comment section asked, what are the chances that ends up being Bakari Rambo just gets promoted to defensive backs coach? Now, first of all, I think that Rambo's done a great job of working his way up the coaching ranks and putting himself in a position to be a candidate for jobs like this. But with all the attention that has been paid to outside names, how much of a disappointment do you think it would be to Georgia fans if the eventual announcement is, hey, congratulations, Dan Lanning's promoted to offensive coordinator, Glenn Schumann's going to be his co-defensive coordinator. I meant defensive for Lanning, you know what I meant.
Yeah.
Schumann's going to be the co-defensive coordinator, and Bakari Rambo's the defensive backs coach. If that's the move you wanted to make, you could have done that, 5 weeks ago. Is that going to be a disappointment for Georgia fans if that's indeed the case? That's no. I don't want to be unfair to Rambo because I do believe he's a pretty impressive coaching, prospect. But you also know how this goes. Fans have heard outside names rumored, and now they want an outside name to fill out that defensive backs role.
Well, with that, I think, number one, I want to echo something you said. I think Rambo is already a hot, rising young coach. He's played in the league. He's the co-interception leader at Georgia.
He's going to coach somewhere.
Listen, I know a lot of recruits that tell me Bakari Rambo is already the real deal as a recruiter and a representative of the Georgia program. There's also a guy by the name of Nick Williams is doing a lot of that good work now for a couple of years as one of those support staffers for the Bulldogs, especially a defensive back. I think most fans, especially the rational fans, the only advice I would say is you're either going to like the guy Kirby chooses, or you're going to trust in your head coach, or you're not. I mean, a nice name like Derek Gansley, a nice name like Corey Raymond, another guy that I thought might have been poised to be a DB coach for Georgia, maybe even ahead of both Bakari Rambo and Nick Williams, was Tavares Tillman, the guy that went along with Mel Tucker to Colorado as well. That's a guy that played at Georgia Tech and had been around college football a long time too. A lot of names there, Georgia. Kirby Smart's had the chance to look at a lot of names. You see the name Wesley McGriff come up in some online reports as well. I think
now McGriff is off the board, though, right? Wasn't he rumored? I mean, he was at Ole Miss recently. He's been rumored to be on his way somewhere else. That I guess there's some conflicting reports about if McGriff's even still available, right?
Yeah, who is really available right now? That's one way to look at it. But to me, the Georgia fans should just sit there and go on a list that they can jot down in the notes pad of their iPhone. How many bad coaching hires has Kirby Smart made so far?
Yeah, was it Florida State that Wesley McGriff was supposed to be going to? I don't even remember now. There's so many of these rumors out there and in place. Bob Smith says that Kirby Smart was at Eagles Landing Christian Academy today. That Kirby copter was flying around the state of Georgia.
Justin Robinson is over there.
Yeah, is that what the Eagles Landing visit was about? I guess a lot of people have seen this on social media, a lot of stuff from the Georgia coaches today. Do you mind just like kind of quickly sort of summarizing what Kirby and his staff are kind of up to around the state of Georgia today? A lot of, sightings of the Georgia coaching staff, Kirby Smart included, throughout the state today. Eagles Landing Christian Academy among the rest.
Now, the one thing I didn't see was video or pictures. Is the Kirby Copter now an official Georgia black or red? Or
the picture that I saw, it looked like it was black to me. Now, I'm also colorblind, so I don't always see colors well, but it's not that canary yellow thing it was back in 2016. Like a lot of things with the Georgia program, there have been improvements since 2016, and the color of the Kirby Copter would appear to be one of those.
Well, I would say this is a show force week for a lot of guys. You get out there, you beat the bushes, and I think Dan Lanning must have clicked off about 9 schools in the last 2 days for the Bulldogs. Watching the swath he leaves through Twitter and online social media posts, he's been everywhere from South Georgia to, I think, Columbia, South Carolina, home of Channing Tindall. The one name you probably haven't seen active yet is maybe a guy like Trey Scott. Georgia is at the point where they're really going to work a lot on 2020 right now, as much as they're going to work on securing the last final few names for 2019.
Speaking of those final few names for 2019, here live at the Marlo's Tavern in Beaufort at the Marlo, Georgia location, Brian Kephart in our YouTube comment section said, and I love this phrasing, what are the realistic chances for Georgia with 5-star offensive tackle Darnell Wright, 5-star wide receiver George Pickens? There aren't a lot of names left on the board for UGA here for the class of 2019. For a lot of fans, there's at least some hopeful optimism for Wright and Pickens. So what can you tell us about that?
I would say, and I've got a memory jog right in front of me, I think the chances might be of Georgia landing both of those guys or one of those guys. Might be the chances of Georgia splitting the season series this year with Kentucky on the hardwood.
It's not too good.
I would say that's not too good.
Jawan Smith says Pickens has to be the number one remaining target on our big board. And, Jeff, I was saying this before our show began here today. I will admit there is something to me a little disappointing when you look at a guy like Pickens, arguably one of the top 10 players in the entire country. Georgia loses receivers. It loses Riley Ridley. It loses McCole Hardman. And yet it can't seem to make the big impression on Pickens to change the game here. Why Pickens would want to go to a place like Auburn? As it stands right now, they don't have a quarterback. Now maybe the kid from Oklahoma transfers over. Maybe all that changes. I'm not impressed with Joe Burrow, the LSU quarterback. That's the other place that's been kind of thought to be in the mix for Pickens. I got to admit, I'm pretty disappointed that Georgia can't, with all the 5 stars it collects at all the other positions, why it can't seemingly make a big impact with George Pickens. I'm pretty disappointed in that.
Well, I think Bo Nix is the future quarterback at Auburn, especially the way George Pickens views it. Remember, he's been a long-time commitment to Auburn. He's from the state of Alabama. I think that's maybe a wait-and-see and maybe percolate mode from a guy that likes to have his coffee in the morning. I'm just using that phrasing because let's get him a look.
I'm big into percolation.
Let's get him on campus.
I'm a big percolator.
Need to see how Pickens feels Georgia on campus, sees everything, sees the depth chart. Because Pickens has had Georgia consistently in his thoughts among those 3 or 4 or 5 schools for the long time.
I can't do anything with a bronze medal. I can't sell the bronze medal for George Pickens recruitment at a pawn shop.
Well, I would say this, Brandon. You need to look to maybe a guy like Demetrius Robertson filling the playmaking void and a Dominic Blaylock filling the playmaking void by all those top-tier receivers.
And I've got a lot of excitement about both those guys, especially Blaylock, but it'd be nice to have another one as well. Colby Curry in our YouTube comment section says, I'm from Northwest Georgia. I actually work in Tennessee. How much do you think T. Martin, that's the former Vols quarterback, most recently offensive coordinator at USC, got fired from that job. He's coming back to Tennessee. We don't yet know what his job title is going to be, but he's coming back to recruit because Jim Chaney can't. What kind of impact do you think that T. Martin's going to have in Knoxville?
Did you see that subtle jab right there?
Listen, we got to be honest. We got to call we have to call balls and strikes around here.
Well, I would say the most interesting, curious thing about that hire to me is obviously who's the play caller and who's the recruiter, but I like another maybe scintillating topic a little bit better. Was that a Pruitt hire or was that a Philip Fulmer hire?
Yeah.
That's one I want to see. That's what's happening there with the Tennessee program. And, I guess Jim Chaney is used to having a lot of chefs in the kitchen. When he had Jay Johnson, when he had James Coley, when he had a lot of guys helping him and figuring out things at Georgia. that's an interesting move because, yeah, T. Martin is a legacy. But a lot of people don't realize that T. Martin's son ended up going to play for Clemson and play receiver for Clemson coming out of Knoxville as well. Obviously, he's a name that's going to help with recruiting. But, again, T. Martin, unless he's on the field as the quarterback's coach, and is that the position he's going to be a quarterback's coach, has that been defined yet?
As of this morning, they still do not know what role he's going to be in, but you got to assume it's going to be as a quarterback's coach. Yeah. I mean, unless they're going to make him running backs coach, something like that. I mean, you got to assume it's going to be something like that because what else could he be, really?
I don't know the benefit of hiring T. Martin at Tennessee unless he can get out on the road and press the flesh and represent the Big T across the great state of Tennessee.
You're going to have to do a lot of that kind of stuff. All right, it's our Countdown to Sunday event. We are live here at the Marlo's Tavern in Beaufort, the Mall of Georgia location. As I said, it's a really cool spot to be because you can get your beverage, your cocktail, and after you finish your meal here at Marlo's, you can just walk around outside and enjoy that. That's a really cool new wrinkle they have here for you at the Mall of Georgia, which, first of all, is a beautiful facility as well. Just an unbelievable shopping mall and a great location. So come on by. 3333 Beaufort Drive is the address here for the Mall of Georgia, a location of Marlo's Tavern. So you can come by and see that tonight where we are or sometime in the very near future. And by the way, when big events like this are happening at the Marlo's Tavern in your neighborhood, you're going to want to know about them as well. It's one of the great ways to find out about that is becoming a Marlo's insider. Text the word Marlo's, M-A-R-L-O-W-S, to 24242. That's Marlo's, M-A-R-L-O-W-S, 24242. When there's a special event or a special offer, you'll be the first to know about it at the tavern right there in your neighborhood. And, of course, huge thanks to Mark, the manager, Justin Sheff, for being really rolling out the red carpet and really making us feel at home here at the Marlo's Tavern in Beaufort tonight. All right, a few more comments. Let me get one here. Somebody asked earlier a pretty good question I wanted to ask about.
Oh, by the way, Kentucky is only up 29-27 on Georgia right now.
There you go.
So there goes my prediction right there. That everybody's going to say, so Georgia's going to get both Darnell Wright and George Pickens now, right, Jeff?
Yeah, the Dogs are playing pretty well at home right now. John Williams Adams says we want a receiver that can make a play when everyone knows we're going to throw to him, take a big physical guy with a leap in hands. I think John's right about that. That's really the definition of the receiver that Georgia's looking for. And you're right, Jeff. It could be that Dominic Blaylock ends up being that guy. But John's description is the really appropriate description. It's third and long. Everybody knows you're throwing it, but that guy can still go get it. J.J. Holman could be running into that form as well, but that kind of guy, a kind of guy that can get you 850, 900, 1,000 yards receiving, that's the kind of name we're really talking about here.
And again, I think we need to just maybe dial in the perceptions of Georgia just a little bit. The Bulldogs have 1,000-yard receiver in the history of the program, and that was the great Terrence Edwards. That's something to think about there as well. But I want to bring up a point I haven't maybe discussed with you yet, and maybe let's just get some closure a little bit. So we saw Pickens in the Under Armour game. Mm-hmm. We saw Pickens in the Alabama-Mississippi game. We saw Hazelwood and Dominic Blaylock. Did I get that name right, Jaden Hazelwood? I think I got that name right.
I think so, yeah.
Maybe we've but which one of those guys looked like the elite number 1, number 2, number 3 receiver in the country based off their performances in a great theater setting, which is those All-American games?
No doubt for me, it's Dominic Blaylock. Now, one of the national rating services, which will go nameless, sort of did him no favors with its recent re-rank. But nonetheless, Dominic Blaylock is the one that looked like the true 5-star in all of that.
Something needs to be said, and maybe we might just be the bang the drum guy for his entire career in Georgia, because that young man's not going to say, look at me.
No, he's not.
That young man is not going to do anything theatrical. Yeah. He's not going to wave a towel. He's going to put his foot down. He's going to get separation from that elite cornerback or safety that's trying to shadow him, and he's going to make first downs, and he's going to move the chains for Georgia. That's what Dominic Blaylock does.
We are going to carry the flag on Dog Nation Daily for Blaylock in a big way, because I really am excited to see what he does in a Georgia uniform. And Jeff's right. The teaser he gives for you in that All-American Bowl in San Antonio is certainly the kind of feeling you get for a guy that could break out in a big way in his college career. We'll look forward to maybe seeing that in 2019. Robert Maloney in our Facebook comment section asked about John Rice Plumlee. This is a complicated situation. Now, by now, we've sort of defined the word blue shirt a little bit. I mean, at least to a certain extent, people kind of know what that is. What people don't know, though, Jeff, is the opportunity to delay enrollment at Georgia and enticing enough of an offer to get a guy like John Rice Plumlee to say no to a school like Mississippi State, who's had a long relationship with him predating the time that Joe Moorhead's been head coach there. You know, I guess Miami's in the mix here too. Can Georgia hold off these other schools for John Rice Plumlee, and how hard is it really trying?
That's a great question. the last time I talked to John, which was a couple days ago, I think, he said there's no new communication with Georgia about a change in status.
Is he limited with his communication with Georgia, given the fact that he's not a signee?
No limits. He just can't do things that the NCAA would define as an official recruit. And what the NCAA recognizes as an official recruit is if the coaches come into your home and visit you, and if you go on an official visit to Georgia.
So he can talk on the phone, either text or phone call, but he can't speak face-to-face.
I mean, he's already had several unofficial visits to Georgia. The NCAA somehow doesn't view that as clear recruiting activity by their vernacular. It's got to be an official, paid-for visit. It's got to be a coach coming to you in your home. And I think this is what Plumlee has always kind of relayed to me, and he really strikes me as an honest. After he got through the initial, what's up with this, huh?
Yeah.
He's always going to look at it at this. It might be 2 months of his life in an inconvenient spot for the best decision for him for his college career. And I still think he's going to take some more officials, but I still think that he still sees himself at Georgia. He still sees himself at Georgia more than any other school. But here's the
Is that because you give the yeah, but then I got another question.
The yeah, but, though, is does Georgia still see him, or does he still want to be scholarship thrifty and say, come in, blue shirt, count towards 2020, and we'd love to have
Is his attraction for Georgia, and honestly, I wouldn't fault him for feeling either way, is his attraction for Georgia more about, hey, I just really like this school, or is it more of a practical thing of there's a chance that Jake Fromm's only got 1 year left, at most he's only got 2 years left, and it's an easier school to maybe work your way up to be the starting quarterback in? How much of this is about the kind of, what the heart wants, and how much of this is the practical thing of, hey, it's actually a fairly easy path to be the starting quarterback compared to a lot of places you might go?
Well, remember, he was going to come to Georgia when it was just Jake Fromm and Justin Fields in the way.
Yeah.
And I don't think Dwan Mathis, with all due respect to his skill set, and also Stetson Bennett, I don't think that's going to knock him off the bump if he still wants to be a Bulldog. I think it's a matter of how much Georgia wants him to be a Bulldog. And again, the other thing to think about Plumlee is there's the baseball part of this riddle for him as well. Which school has the baseball the baseball check mark for him there? It's also which school offers a great degree, and it's also just Georgia. Maybe they haven't always said the things John Rice Plumlee has wanted to hear, but Georgia has been very honest with Plumlee whenever it had the opportunity to. What I mean by that is when everybody else was saying, hey, how about athlete, how about defense, how about kick returner, punt returner, how about a little bit of slot receiver? Georgia was always steadfast from the jump that they saw him at quarterback. Let's remember, he came for the scavenger hunt. He won the scavenger hunt with all those great recruits that were there, and he also was a guy that came out of that quarterback derby. Brandon, you remember what the oasis in the desert it was walking around trying to find a 2019 quarterback? There were names like Joey Yellen. There were names like, Georgia had them all in. They brought them all in, and the guy that came out of Calzada, the guy that came out of that quarterback derby with the offer and the ability to commit, that was John Rice Plumlee way back when.
Let me change the subject. You're Eric Richardson. We talked about wide receivers earlier. Name that comes up a lot of fans. This is a popular player on the Georgia roster, and that's Tommy Bush. I know that Kirby had some complimentary things to say about Bush in the lead-up to the Sugar Bowl because Bush, I think, gave the Georgia defense a pretty good look for what guys like Colin Johnson and little Jordan Humphrey were going to be able to do for the Texas wide receiving corps. But, Bush was not a factor in this his first year on campus. How much of an impact player do you think that Bush has a chance to be in 2019?
I think that's the scholarship playmaker question. I mean, that's the George Pickens question for you in your mind.
Yeah.
Who's going to be the guy, and I like the term you use, or one of our audience used, who's going to be the guy that catches that ball on 3rd and 8 when the entire stadium knows the ball's coming his way? And I think most people, let's call balls and strikes, like you said. And this is kind of like the Brandon terminology of stacking up elite talent in terms of recruiting. You got to think one of those guys between Tommy Bush and Matt Landers is going to give you a legit playmaker for Georgia. At least that's the hope. Tommy Bush, remember, when he was coming into Georgia, we said brake pedal, brake pedal. This is a guy that comes from an offense that throws the ball about 10 times a game, 12 times a game. In his high school, he only caught like 30 balls his senior year, 2 or 3 a game. That's not a guy that's used to a high-profile offense, and you knew there was going to be an adjustment period for him there. I think most Georgia fans are going to know something pretty clear about Tommy Bush year 2, the same way they learned something about Jeremiah Holloman year 2.
Yes, that's a good point. Steve Walden was also mentioning Holloman as well, and when I think about the leap that someone can take, Holloman obviously comes to mind. Now, he showed out in his first G-Day. You'll remember this. Holloman had a couple of really acrobatic, very athletic catches, and you thought, ooh, what Mike could be. And then in 2017, you didn't see a lot from Holloman in his first year. You almost wondered, is this going to be a guy that, for whatever reason, the light doesn't come on for him at the University of Georgia? Well, you talk about coming on. The light really came on for Holloman in a big way this year. I'd never try to promise you that the same thing's going to happen for Tommy Bush, but when you see the possibility that has been put on display by J.J. Holloman, it certainly leaves you thinking that there's at least a chance for Tommy Bush in that regard. Plus, Bush, not a former five-star receiver necessarily, but a guy that's got the height and he can run. He reminds you of some of these receivers who've done some things in the college game. He's certainly got some of that. I think that's one of the reasons why he's such a big fan favorite, because from a physical standpoint, he brings to the table some of those, those specs that you want to see big-time receivers have.
I think the name, we were talking about banging the drum a second ago. I don't think the name Tyler Simmons comes up enough. I think Tyler Simmons is Demetrius Robertson are probably the guys most in line to be the number 2 and number 3 receivers for this Georgia offense in 2019. But I would also hearken everybody to think about 2 more names. It's not the Bush name. It's not the Matt Landers name. It's the Kearis Jackson name, a guy that was tucked away very neatly in that class of 2018, an early enrollee as well, along with that Fields fellow. But another name that I think kind of gets lost in the shuffle here, a very big name for Georgia, especially the 2019 year, has got to be Trey Blunt. Trey Blunt is a guy most people don't remember. He never redshirted at Georgia. He didn't start. He started 1 game of his true freshman season, but he played in all 15 in that magical 2017 year. This is a guy, when you see Hardman move, when you see Ridley move, when you see Godwin move, you see Crumpton move, when you see Jason Stanley move, this is a guy I think that's poised to make a leap as well.
Byron Welker reminding us as we go to we got the TVs on here at the Marlo's Tavern in Buford. Georgia down just 4 against Kentucky. So the Dogs, and what looks to be a pretty good crowd there at Stegeman Coliseum, is making a pretty good run on things right now. So we'll kind of keep you updated on that and having a good time hanging out watching this game with a lot of Georgia fans here at the Marlo's Tavern in Buford here this evening. By the way, don't forget, we got some more of these fun events coming up throughout the rest of the month, that maybe a tavern even in your neighborhood. So become a Marlo's Tavern Insider. You can find out more about that. Text the word Marlo's to 24242. That's 24242. The word Marlo's. You can become a Marlo's Insider and find out about great offers, special events there at the tavern right there in your neighborhood. And one of the cool things, tonight, another example of this in Buford, at the tavern close to you, every chef, it's Justin here, it's a different chef at every Marlo's. They get a chance to kind of put their own spin on the menu, the ingredients they have available. A lot of times the kind of the local tie in there. So that's always one of the cool things you want to check in on and find out about when you're at a local Marlo's Tavern. What does your tavern have that's special just for that tavern? It may even be one of the craft brews there on draft there as well. So a lot of really cool stuff there on that when you check out the Marlo's Tavern closest to you. And, of course, to the great folks who have come out to be with us tonight here at the Marlo's Tavern in Buford, we appreciate you taking out some time here on a Tuesday night to be a part of that. Are you okay with doing a few more comments before we get ready to go? Bryce Dixon says you need a flu shot. You have had a cold for seemingly I think that Donham is still at Georgia the last time I did. No. Not coughing?
Hunter Renfro was catching passes for Clemson. I think, hey, one thing, though, I don't know if it's double secret lip lock right here, but are we allowed to talk about future Marlows this month? Are we allowed to keep that on the DL, or where's that?
Yeah, I don't know what we're allowed to say on that as far as other locations, but can I just say it this way? There's a very good chance, and Georgia Autographs was talking about some of these locations in the Facebook comment section a moment ago. There's a very good chance that in a couple of weeks we're actually going to make a debut at a Marlo's Tavern we've never been at before. There's a chance that's coming up, and I'm really excited about that.
Oh, wow. That's a new spot. That'll be interesting as well.
Yeah, so looking forward to that. All right, let me Juwan Smith says, hey, B.A. and Jeff, let's talk about the 2019 defense. Now, I'm a big believer that, going into year 4, Kirby said 3 defenses at Georgia. I think they all 3, and you may disagree with this a little bit, I think all 3 of these defenses have been varying degrees of really, 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 really good, maybe just south of great. The 2017 defense had Roquan Smith, maybe the one exception to that rule. But Georgia's had a lot of very good defenses under Kirby Smart that haven't always been great. I think the 2019 defense is Kirby's best chance at a truly great defense that can really lock it down in all levels. Now, that's obviously going to make the assumption that Georgia finds a capable replacement for DeAndre Baker. But I have a very, very bullish view right now of what the Georgia defense can be in 2019. I think it's going to rush the passer better. I think it's much deeper at the inside linebacker position, and it's at least competent at the defensive secondary if it's not quite as dynamic as it was with DeAndre Baker. That, for me, is the recipe for a great defense, and frankly, I don't really care who the defensive coordinator is.
Man, I may have a different view.
Is that right?
I may have a different view, and I don't want to be the harbinger of doom here, but I think there are three guys on that defense that have to play perhaps their best seasons as Bulldogs for that unit to be salty. And I mean, that level,
okay.
To me, I'm thinking of the level of very good to great, meaning top 5 in the SEC versus top 10 in the country. And I think there are three names. I think David Marshall has to come back in a big way for Georgia. I think Julian Rochester has to play big for Georgia, and Tyler Clark. I can't see Georgia looking nasty, sporty, demolishing teams without some upper echelon years from those three guys.
All right, but let me give you something else to think about, because part of the issue with, and you're obviously focusing a lot on defensive linemen there, but part of the issue that accentuated Georgia's defensive line issues was the fact that Georgia, with all due respect, was also not particularly strong with its inside linebackers a year ago. So those tip-of-the-spear defenders for stopping the run, Georgia wasn't really very, I hate to say not very good, but they were not as good as great could be in the first or the second level there. So even if you're not top flight across the board with the defensive line, fully filled out with your depth, it's a year older version of Channing Tindall. It's a freshman 5-star like Nakobe Dean. My expectation is that Georgia's going to be significantly better with its inside linebacker position, hopefully a healthy Monty Rice, who would have made a big difference against Alabama had he been 100%. So I'm sort of expecting that linebacker group can make up for what may be a lack of a stellar run-stopping defensive line. My guess is the interior linebackers help out in that regard next season.
Well, pay attention there to the names I said and the position group I said, and not the names or spots I didn't say. I think Georgia needs about those three guys combined with guys like Devontae Wyatt, who impressed me a lot as true freshman.
Yeah, Wyatt,
his first year at
especially
Georgia.
towards the end of the season, Wyatt was a factor.
Malik Herring, Jordan Davis. I think they need about another 3 or 4 guys of elite-type D-tackle talent, and that's why I rolled off Marshall, I rolled off Rochester, and I rolled off Clark. And let's face it, those guys are all going to be seniors as well, their 4th year in the program. They should be some really bad dudes. But I didn't talk about safety. I didn't point fingers at the cornerback spots, the inside linebacker spots, and the outside linebacker spots. You would expect Georgia, and even the defensive end spot, you would expect Georgia to have the players they need. I mean, and guys, just look at the inside backers and outside linebackers. If Georgia doesn't have elite linebacker play for the next 3 or 4 years, something is amiss in Athens.
Yeah, Cameron Merrill says we got to get to the pass rush going. Need a minimum of 35 sacks. I think that's a pretty good number from Cameron. I've certainly said I'd love to have 40. Garrett Murkison says if the defensive line can't get to the quarterback next year, then Georgia needs to consider moving on from Trey Scott. For me, this is more of an issue with Dan Lanning and the outside linebackers, because that's where the pass rush I think next year is going to come from. And I'm really hopeful that it's a pretty good group. As you said, it's a year older version of Brenton Cox. Somebody in the YouTube comment section a moment ago mentioned Adam Anderson. John Anthony was talking about Adam Anderson taking a big step forward. I expect Nolan Smith to play as a freshman. I expect Jermaine Johnson as a junior college transfer to play in his first year in the program. That's 4 pretty good pass rushers right there, 4 guys that give you an opportunity to get to the quarterback more, and that's before you add in anything from one of the guys you mentioned, David Marshall, who, when he's been healthy, has been one of those guys from that sort of 3-4 defensive end position that can get to the quarterback.
This is probably something we trot out around the spring game, but one guy, and he's actually on the other side of the ball that I am really excited to see what he can do. And folks, listen, Georgia is at the point at any position when one guy moves on, when 2 guys move on, it is the chance to unwrap the new toys in the offense and see what they can do. And I think one name no one will ever mention until the throngs of August that I'm really excited to see what he can do, and that is the redshirt freshman tight end John Fitzpatrick.
Yeah.
He is 6'7" and a half. He's going to be about 240. He is going to have some of the best hands on the team, if not the best hands on the team, and that will be one of the bigger targets, the biggest target Jake Fromm has ever had as like a safety valve. And you're going to say, Jeff, they don't throw the tight end. We've seen this movie 17 times. John Fitzpatrick could be that bulldog no one's talking about.
And, watch this on Sunday in the AFC Championship game. One of the things you'll see is, and our buddy Connor Riley's a Patriots fan, the Patriots are one of those teams that they'll throw out of that two tight end set. They don't always throw two tight ends,
sure,
but they'll throw out of that set. Georgia likes to line up in that two tight end look a lot. And, they don't have to throw to Fitzpatrick to be throwing the ball out of that set. So, that's a pretty important name and a position to think about because Georgia's going to play with two tight ends on the field, at least two tight ends a lot, on the field a good bit next season. And I think Fitzpatrick, guy we've actually talked to in one of our Marlo's Tavern broadcasts in the past, I think he is one of those candidates to really be on the field and making a contribution. He probably played more than some fans realize this past year anyway.
Here's what folks are going to get used to. Remember that first game of the year when Cade Mays trotted out in that 42 jersey?
Yeah, you could see some of that.
Played some tight end. You're going to see Justin Schaefer. You're going to see guys like Clay Webb. They're going to be wearing those tight end numbers and functioning as a tight end, that third, fourth tight end on the team going forward in 2019.
All right, we've actually gone over on our time a little bit, and we actually haven't talked as much recruiting as we probably could have, just given the nature of what's going on with the coaching staff, and people are curious about some other things right now. There aren't a ton of names left on the board, Jeff, but give me that kind of final thought of, is this a deal where the tight end is the only player that Georgia signs? Is Kyrie Elam a better than 50% chance, worse than 50% chance? I don't want to lead you too much with this. Just kind of give me a summation here of kind of how you envision February wrapping up for Georgia as it stands right now.
Well, it's the unknown right now because you need to know how Elam has a relationship with whoever Georgia hires there. Did he get recruited there? Did he get offered by that guy maybe when he was at another school? You just got to figure out how that chemistry would happen there. Again, I like I said on your show this morning, I think Georgia's at a certain type of weight level with Kyrie Elam. I think he likes the thought of playing with Tyreek Stevenson. He likes the thought of playing with Tyson Campbell, Lewis Seen, and guys like that in the Georgia defensive backfield. But what can Georgia do to make him love it? What can Georgia do to make him like those thoughts and like the thought of being one of those South Florida dogs? And I think the way Georgia does that is not only with the official visit and all the pomp and circumstance that goes on with that, but that's giving him a guy he trusts, he respects as like a mentor in college to get him to that next level.
Our buddy Bryce Dixon in the Facebook comment section says, because I a moment ago said we're out of time, he says, hold on a second. There's no time limit around Dog Nation. And Bryce, here's what I'm going to say. Jeff and I can stay here all night. Y'all can stay here all night. It's the people who kind of get this set up and running here, our folks back in Atlanta. They're the ones who are in a little bit more of a strict clock. They're the ones who are like, you guys got to wrap this thing up because they want to go home. So we'll get ready to do that. And I guess, a final thought here. Do you think Georgia has a defensive backs coach in place by Friday afternoon at 5 p.m.?
Would seem fortuitous for them to do that, especially.
I don't know what that means.
Fortuitous. It would seem in Georgia's favor,
yes,
to Georgia's benefit.
It would be in their favor.
To have that guy in place. But, I don't know. There's also the realm of Georgia doesn't have the defensive backs coach yet, the defensive coordinator yet. And maybe Elon could potentially push that visit to another weekend in January as well. Just all depends on the timing of stuff and everything else. I would say that the Georgia fan who lives and breathes recruiting would like to see Georgia be able to tell Kaiir Elam, here's the man that will coach you, here's his office, here's what he looks like in a Georgia G. I think Georgia wants to be able to share all those things with the nation's number 7 cornerback like Kaiir Elam when he does make that official visit, which could define and frame up his chances at Georgia.
Speaking of visits, if you haven't done so, you need to take a visit to the Marlo's Tavern in your neighborhood. Let me also suggest the Mall of Georgia location where we are right now, 3333 Buford Drive, a terrific place to hang out, have some food, enjoy a cocktail, walk around the green space, the village right out here, do a little shopping. It's a really cool event. It's a great location. So check out the Mall of Georgia location of Marlo's Tavern if you have not done so. As Jeff said, we've got some upcoming Marlo's broadcasts in the weeks to come. We'll be sure to tell you all about those, including the possibility of maybe a surprise location in there coming up in the very near future as well. So that's all coming up in the days ahead. For now, though, let me leave you with this. Stay close to the forum at forum.dognation.com. I know Jeff's got plenty for you in there as news breaks and the reaction. I love watching the Georgia fans kind of give their thoughts on all this news as it unfolds. So check out the forum. Also, dognation.com. Plenty more from Chip Towers and Mike Griffith on who the next Georgia coach to be hired will be. Likely a defensive backs coach, and plenty more from Jeff on the recruiting front there as well. I'll see you tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. for Dog Nation Daily as we talk about all this stuff and much more. And then, as Jeff also promised, back here again at a Marlo's Tavern very soon as well. Thanks for being with us tonight. Countdown to signing day here live from the Marlo's Tavern in Beaufort. We'll look forward to seeing you again soon on the Dog Nation video channels and in person at a Marlo's close to you very soon. You'll have a great night, everybody.